Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais in Ontario, Canada. Looking forward to spring, but today is not looking like spring. We are here with episode number 162 of the Yakking Show. This is the show to awaken you to new perspectives, and you need to do that for the changing world we're living in, and it's certainly changing every day as we go through it. As always, interesting guests on the show, but it's not my job to introduce guests because Kathleen does a much better job of that than I can ever hope to do. But before I introduce my co-host, let me give her a plug. Kathleen can help you with your IT problems. So if you need to recruit talent and you're having difficulty finding them, or if you need, her contact details are in the description, both on the video and the audio channel. So welcome, Kathleen. How are you doing? Are you as cold as I am in Ontario today?
I sure am, Peter. Winter just won't let us go right now.
It would.
Thank you for that introduction. And thank you all so very much for tuning into our show. We so appreciate you and we love reading your comments. So please keep those coming. And if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. His name is Kevin Mills. Welcome, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. You are the co-founder of Streamlined Podcast. Now, this is a company, folks, if you are interested in podcasting, already have a podcast, you will want to listen to this. He would help you. Kevin's company helps podcasters make their podcast look absolutely professional and gets them out on air. So welcome to the show again, Kevin. Tell us for our audience, can you give us a little bit about your background and how you came to create Streamlined Podcasts?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting journey, to put it lightly. So I got my first full-time job, quote unquote, when I was like 14 years old. And the very first thing that I was doing was actually working at a body shop that my dad was the foreman of. And I was doing commission-based work, repairing cars there. But I really didn't have a whole lot of passion in what I was doing. I was just the kind of person that could pick things up very quickly and easily. And so I went to the owner of that company and I was like, hey, I like working for you. This is great and all, but I really don't have any passion in what I'm doing right now. And he actually had a weather company, an online weather company that he had just started up. And he hired me on to help with basically setting up all of the different live streams and setting up the website. We did different like conferences of sorts where we set up booths and tried to get the name out there about the platform. At one point, he had me climbing these like radio towers and putting webcams at the top of these towers. That way we could show the broadcast. And so that was kind of one of the first forays into quote unquote media. And it was, it's been a journey since then. I will say throughout my journey, I've had a couple of moments where I've been, I guess, a little bit more interested in making a good salary than doing something that I'm passionate about. So I spent several years in sales. I spent 3 years doing direct sales. That went really well, made a good income. But again, I didn't feel that great about what I was doing. I went from there to mortgages, selling mortgages. Again, great money, but at the end of the day, I didn't feel like what I was doing really made that much impact. And so when I first started selling mortgages, I was listening to podcasts all the time to try to better my skills, so to speak. But along that journey, I ran into a guy that I had met several years back who had gotten into podcasting, and he was doing it really well. He had one of the top 20 business podcasts. It's called Build Your Network. His name is Travis Chappell. And he started a mastermind to teach people how to build a successful podcast and then consequently monetize it. So I paid him a good chunk of change to be able to be a part of that group. And that's where I started my podcast. In that group, I met my other 3 co-founders of Streamlined Podcast, Carl Sona, Rob McClellan, and Hans Struzina. They all had radically different backgrounds. Hans is an Olympian. Rob used to be the CEO of one of John Maxwell's companies. Carl had a very, very successful run in medical device sales and a successful exit there. So all from very drastic differences or different walks of life, but we all had the same goal, and that was to create a podcast that made a difference. And as a part of that goal, we were running into similar challenges, and that was the post-production of it. We signed up to be podcasters to share our message, not to edit audio and design graphics and write show notes and publish. And we had no interest in being involved in the all of the stuff that it takes to actually get your podcast out there. And so we did what a lot of podcasters do, and we hired VAs. And if you've ever gone down that route, that can almost be just as much work sometimes, kind of managing everyone's schedules. And then when someone's sick, well, now you've got to push your release date back. It was just a whole nother set of nightmares. And we went to see if there were any podcast production agencies in the market that kind of provided a solution here that would be consistent, reliable, and affordable. And there were certainly agencies that did good work, but they were by no means affordable or anywhere close to it. The majority of pricing at that time was pretty close to around $1,000 an episode for decent work. Now that number has gotten a lot closer to about $300 an episode, but we still felt that was too high. So we put our brains together. We did a few different things. We developed a pretty impressive system that helps us keep everything in one place and manage the workflow of all of the different episodes that we're touching. And then B, we invested in finding some of the very best of the best content writers and audio engineers in all of these different countries across the world to be able to assemble what we call a super team to be able to, handle all this production at an affordable price. And then consequently, the majority of our prices are going to be a lot closer to like $70-$75 an episode. So it's a lot more feasible for the everyday podcaster. So that's kind of the overview of the journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good. So before I forget, tell our audience what the name of your own podcast so they can look you up.
Yeah. So it's called Screw the Side Hustle. I'm actually not releasing episodes anymore with that for a couple of different reasons. But the main reason is I found that at this point in my life, I don't really enjoy being behind the microphone as much as I do being a part of the production process for all of these other creators that we're empowering.
Okay.
So yeah.
Fair comment. But those episodes are available, though.
Yes, they're still available. A lot of great episodes. One that I would really suggest would be the one with Steve Sims. He's a phenomenal person that's lived an insane life and definitely worth your listen.
Great. So for our video audience, you can see that caption under the film right here. And for our audio listeners, I will put that in the description so you can follow up on that episode of Screw the Side Hustle and the one with Steve Sims in particular. So let's move on. Tell our audience about the services that your company offers, Gavin.
Yeah, so we're a full-scale podcast production company. So what does that mean? It means that you can show up to record and we'll handle everything else. What we do specifically for podcasters kind of depends on what you need us to do. So we have what we call a base package that everyone kind of starts out at. And just the quick 30-second rundown of what that looks like is it's $279 a month. And that gives you 120 minutes of content. So basically 4 30-minute episodes a month. And what we're going to do is we're going to edit all the audio. So we're going to put in your intros and outros, any ads you have. We're going to optimize it, level the audio tracks. We'll remove excessive ums and ahs. We're listening for audible editing notes, and then as well as any overt mistakes. Additionally, when you upload it to us, you have a section where you can put explicit or written editing notes that we'll pay attention to as well. After we've edited it, we're going to ID3 tag the episodes. So we're basically just putting metadata in the files to make them searchable. We're going to create SEO optimized show notes with highlights, tweetable quotes, and any resources that you mentioned that'll be hyperlinked. Then we create a graphic that'll be resized for 3 different platforms. That way you can share it on social media. And additionally, we're going to, if you don't already have a hosting platform, we're actually going to provide that for you and we'll upload it there. But if you already have a hosting platform, we're kind of agnostic there and we'll upload it to any platform, and we'll let you know when the episode goes live. And for probably 75% of our clients, that's all they need us to do. But we do as well handle video editing, video clips, audiograms, guest booking services, uploading it to your website, as well as full production services where we'll actually have a producer on the recording with you that's kind of running the show for you, giving you pre-interview prep docs and the whole 9 yards.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, eh, Kathleen?
It's really remarkable, actually, what you. So you've given us a glimpse of the back end process of what it is that you do, and a little bit about the front end in terms of the client facing stuff that you do. Can you walk us through a little bit more about the client facing protocol? So if we were clients of yours, what would you do from the moment, I guess, that we connect with you to the raw data that you then get? What can a client expect?
That's a great question. We've actually been working really hard over the last 8 or 9 months developing an entirely new podcast production management application that will be live April 11th. So in roughly 12 days, the process is going to change. And for the purposes of this conversation, I'll walk you through what it will look like on that new process.
Absolutely.
So basically, you would go to our website, and either if you have any questions, there's an easy way to book a call with us and we'll get on the call with you and iron out any questions. But otherwise, you'd select the proper package for the amount of episodes that you're releasing. You'd sign up. And then after you sign up, it's going to take you through a sign up process, or after you put in your credit card information, it'll take you through a sign up process that's going to ask you for all of the standard information for your podcast that never changes. So like your cover art, your intros and outros, your release schedule, etc. After you've uploaded all that stuff to us, then you're going to be redirected to the dashboard. And in the dashboard, there's a little button that says add new episode. You click on that button and that'll allow you to upload your next episode for us to work on. And so it's going to ask you things like, what's the episode number? When do you want it to be released? It'll have a field for you to put in any editing notes, any guests that were on the episode, et cetera, et cetera. After you've uploaded the episode, it kind of creates a new little line in the management app, and you can click on that individual episode and it'll pull up the episode page. And in that page, you can communicate directly with the team specifically about that episode, as well as add additional files or download the files that the team is turning around. And so that's where kind of the majority of the communication will happen between us and you. But if you ever feel like you need to get on a call with us for anything, A, we have a hotline that's available, but then B, you can always schedule a Zoom call with one of our reps, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions, and we try to make ourselves as available as possible for our clients.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. So that has a big bearing on the next thing I'm going to ask you. We find, you go back a step, when we started doing 2 episodes a week, and then we found we were doing very little else, and we put some timing to it, and we work on, we reckon between us it takes 5 hours of our time, 5 man hours from start to finish for an episode, a 30-minute episode, video and audio. And that includes finding the guest, vetting the guest, coming up with the questions, the actual recording, the editing, the putting it on social media. So sometimes longer, but average of 5 hours. So my question is, and I know the answer to this, do you think the average person who gets into podcasting has any appreciation for the time and commitment involved in doing this?
I think they have no clue. I think they expect you just getting a Zoom call, and when you're done, you upload it wherever it's supposed to be uploaded and you're done.
Yeah.
I think that's the assumption, and that's definitely not the case. I would say 5 hours, you guys have definitely got a really good system in place. The average person's probably spending between 5 to 8 hours per episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I've got the editing down to about 45, sometimes 50 minutes, including building the graphics. But it's taken me 2 years to get there. And
Right.
Kathleen does a lot of the vetting work and checking out future guests and that. So the next question, sorry, there's a second part to that question. Is that why do you think a lot of podcasts don't survive more than a few episodes?
I think that's part of it. I think that's a big part. I think that's like 70%. I think the other 30% is they expect to get more downloads than they get.
Okay.
So like we're in the age of Instagram and YouTube where, you know, the successful YouTube channels and Instagram pages have millions and millions of followers and etc. And podcasting, that's just not the norm. I actually have some stats right offhand here. If you'll just give me 2 seconds.
Sure.
So the top 1% of podcasts in the first 7 days of releasing an episode get 3,800 downloads. The top 5% get 790. The top 10% get 333. The top 25% get 90. And the top 50% of the medium podcast gets 29.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So we're not doing too bad.
Yeah. And so, right. And a lot of people think, you know, I'm only getting 100 downloads or 50 downloads. I'm not doing that great. But what if you were going to a conference every single week and talking to 100 engaged people?
Absolutely. That's what we talk about. Yeah. And the value of the contact you make through this is huge. Yeah. Interesting. So that's very, very interesting statistics. No, thank you for that.
Yes. So
back to you.
What is your ideal, who is the ideal customer then for your business?
Yeah, so the ideal customer for us is the person that doesn't want to worry about any of that stuff,
right?
Any of the editing or show notes or graphics. They just want to make content. They just want to spend time interviewing people. If you're like that, we should talk, because that's what our company allows you to do, is to be able to show up and record and forget about everything else. With that being said, as a part of this journey into developing our production management app, we've also been simultaneously creating software that is going to be for independent podcasters and production agencies that either are working with their own editor or they're editing it themselves, in order to help ideally cut down that whole workflow that they're currently spending. So for example, with this new system that we're using, and it uses a combination of artificial intelligence and a few other pretty interesting things that I can't really talk a ton about at the moment, but in our case, it's increased our workflow about 3x. So before we were using this system versus now, we're doing it about 3 times quicker, and the result is much better, if I'm being quite honest.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about that, but that will be a little bit later in this year, towards August, September-ish.
Okay, excellent. That's something to look forward to. So I want to switch gears a little bit and give a preface to my question. I get on average 10 emails a week of people wanting to sell me their services, from everything from website design to finding podcast guests to helping me create the world-winning podcast. And I look at the headline, I don't go much further. Some of them I might look at the first line and it's delete, delete, delete. There was something about your one that was so compelling, I had to contact you to get you as a guest on the show, but to look at your, first and foremost, to look at your website and think, wow, this is a service we need to use, we can afford it. And that's another question for later. So I don't know if you wrote those emails yourself or one of your content creators did, but what I'm doing, and I'm giving you an endorsement to our audience, those emails were really good. And that's why you're on the show. So tell us a bit about your content creation services.
Yeah, so good question. Great question. I actually did write the first drafts of those emails, and I have a lot of experience with email marketing from being in mortgages and etc. But with that being said, the reason it's as good as it is because I did give it to my best content writer to do another pass on it, and he added all the special special stuff, you know. So we definitely very much prioritize making sure that the content that we're writing is engaging and captivating. Although a good portion of the reason you have show notes is for SEO purposes, because audio files really aren't searchable. Additionally, though, it gives listeners, you know, a 10, 15, 20-second chance to say, hey, I want to listen to this episode, or I don't want to listen to this episode. And if it's just a word vomit, they're probably not going to want to listen to that episode. But if it's captivating and engaging, then the chances of them clicking on it are pretty high. And we all know in podcasting, when someone starts an episode, they're 80% likely to finish it to completion. So again, from your show notes to your title to even like the cover art design, it's just basically set up to get people's attention and get them to question a little bit, and to come into your ecosystem.
Okay, so I've got to ask you something else there. You said that on podcasts, so we're talking audio, 80% of the people who start it will finish. I would guess that's a lower percentage on video.
Yes, much lower on video.
Much lower on video.
To be fair, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I think it's somewhere between 30 to 40%.
Yeah, probably.
If you want to Google that and verify and put in the show notes.
Yeah, and here's an observation, and it's just personal observation with no science behind it. We find some of our episodes do much better on audio, and others, the majority do. We get more views on the majority on video than we do audio, but some of the audio get a surprisingly high number of downloads, and we can't find a pattern. It's not as if it's one particular type of guest or one topic. It's sort of all over the place, and I wish I could find the answer to that. So.
Yeah, so the reason you get downloads is not because people are finding it on YouTube or they're finding it on Apple Podcasts. I can 90% guarantee you that. The reason you're getting downloads is because people are sharing it. So maybe on the episodes where the video is doing better, for some reason or another, the majority of people are sharing on YouTube that episode.
Okay, got it.
And then with audio, sharing on Apple Podcasts. So there's Apple Podcasts and Spotify both. At the current moment, their algorithm for podcast discovery sucks. It's horrible. It's horrible. And so to get discovered, it has to be done through social media, sharing, et cetera, guesting on other podcasts. We are seeing, though, that there's quite a few startups in this space that are trying to tackle this. One that I would take a look at would be Podbox. And, you know, you mentioned that a second ago, you mentioned that every week you get multiple emails from people trying to sell you stuff for your podcast, right? If you ever get to where you say, that's something I don't really like, Podbox is working on a solution for that. So the reason you get a bunch of emails is because you have a public contact email with your podcast. And when you're setting up a podcast, there's no way to get around that. You have to have a public email. So Podbox is creating a blockchain solution that allows you to verify it with like a blockchain wallet versus your email address. That way you won't get a bunch of spam emails.
Yeah, but the problem with that is then we don't get to meet guys like you, though. So there's a bit of a downside.
Yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there because I know some people don't like it. Me personally, I really like having my email associated with the podcast because, to that point, it opens up a lot of opportunities. Not everyone trying to sell you something is purely coming from a aspect of taking, you know.
That's right. Sure. No, there's Kathleen, back to you.
So Kevin, tell us about Podbox.
Yeah, so the Podbox is something that we developed at the beginning of 2021. So we started the company basically as soon as COVID hit in 2020. I think April 1st was technically our official first month, but we kind of started on the idea in January. And what we found over the rest of 2020 is we talked to a lot of people that could use our services, obviously, but there was a lot of people who needed help getting off the ground, right? And getting a podcast started. And so we said, hey, let's put something together that basically removes all barriers to entry and it has everything in one place for you to start your own podcast. And so we created the Podbox. So what's the Podbox? The Podbox is all of the physical tech that you need for a podcast. So it's literally the same exact microphone I'm using on this recording, same boom arm, same headphones, the whole 9 yards. It'll have all of the cables, everything you need to get professional sounding audio. And then additionally, it's going to come with this book. It's called The Easiest Way to Start a Podcast. It's really short. You can read it in a plane ride, and it basically tells you everything that you need to know about starting a podcast and nothing that you don't need to know. Okay. Then we're going to give you access to our team to help you create cover art that'll show up in Apple Podcasts and Spotify and make you stand apart from your competition. Then we're also going to help you create your intro and outro that introduces and exits the episode for each time. And we're also going to provide your hosting platform and get that set up for you. And then we're going to actually edit your first 4 episodes for free.
Wow.
So tech, all the digital assets you need, and editing for a month, basically. All of that is $497.
Wow.
Wow.
Value.
Not bad.
Yeah, I mean, the majority, I could point you to competitor after competitor that charges $500 for just cover art or $500 for just an intro and outro. So we feel that we're pretty fairly priced there. And then if anyone feels like they need more hands-on, we do have an upgrade to that, which is called the Max, Podbox Max. And that's everything that I just mentioned. But additionally, you're going to have 4 coaching sessions with our resident podcasting coach. And he's actually based out of Canada. And he'll walk you through from start to finish everything that you need to get live.
Excellent.
And that's an extra $500. So that would be $997.
Okay.
Right. And just to remind the audience that the dollar figure is actually in US dollars, right?
Yes, that's correct.
But just as a comparison, I've just paid our annual hosting invoice for the audio platform we use, which then sends it out to Spotify and all these others. And that was Canadian, something like $140, right? Just for the hosting of that. Everything else I've still got to do myself. So what you're talking about is pretty good value. So while we're talking money, I'm going to throw another one in for you. We love doing what we're doing with our show, and we started it for 2 reasons, because like you, at the beginning of COVID, everyone was gloomy and miserable, and we thought, let's put a bit of light into people's lives. And secondly, we used to attend a lot of live networking events, Kathleen and I, in our local communities. And that's where we got contacts for other businesses, and that all died overnight. So we thought, let's help promote some of our local businesses. And we did. In the first 6 months, promoted a lot of them. So it was an act of love, and we got to enjoy it, and we wouldn't change it for the world, because we meet interesting people every week like you, but we don't make any money out of it, right? We meet people, and that leads to other things which may or may not be good business opportunities, but the show itself doesn't make any money. So we would have difficulty taking your services on, as much as we'd love to, because it doesn't earn any money. So what is the easiest way to monetize? And this is for a benefit, not just us, but our audience as well. With your experience, how do you monetize a podcast?
Easiest way to monetize is definitely not advertisers.
No,
that is the hardest part. And it takes the most traction to really get anywhere. So let me just touch on that real briefly. Basically, for each ad, every 1,000 downloads that ad gets, the price on that is going to be anywhere from $25 to $35.
Right.
So you need to be doing thousands and thousands and thousands of downloads. Basically, you need to get 3,000 downloads an episode on average in order to pay for our services from just advertising.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's just a caveat, because a lot of people think, advertising is the way to go. In my experience, the easiest way to monetize a podcast is definitely if you already have some kind of business that you can use the podcast to support and funnel customers and partners into. That's kind of no-brainer, so to speak. I know a lot of people that have their podcast set up as prospecting calls. So that interview is literally a prospecting call, basically. And then after the interview, they would follow up from there. If you don't have some kind of business that you can tie into the podcast, to me, another very easy way is to create some form of mastermind or coaching offer or sorts. So for example, you guys, you're at 160 episodes plus now. The average podcaster stops at 7. You guys are doing, you're doing very well.
Wow.
What if you charge $50 a month, $99 a month to help people get a podcast started? Then you only need 2 or 3 people in that program to cover editing services.
Right. Yep.
And then the last way that I would say is a good way to monetize is by, so basically you take your audio, you publish the entire audio to iTunes, Spotify, etc. You take half of the video and you publish it to YouTube, and you take the other half of the video and you put it behind a paywall, and you make that part interactive.
Right.
So allow the people that are paying in that paywall to ask questions live during that interview. And there's a tool called Riverside that makes it really easy to do that. And I think it's like $15 a month or something like that.
Wow.
And it actually will help you get a lot better quality as well, because it downloads local versions of the recording, not just the web proxy versions.
Wow, thanks for giving. That's really interesting for our audience and interesting for us as well. So I know we're running slightly over time, but I've got a question I've got to ask you. Kathleen, can I go ahead and ask my burning question?
Go ahead. I know it's burning, so go ahead.
So my burning question that I ask everybody, and yours is a slight variation. I ask all the successful guests we have, and you're certainly in that category, but I want to specify about podcasting. So over the last 2 or 3 years, in my opinion, the number of podcasters has exploded. And as you've just said, many of them don't stay the course, but there's still a lot. So firstly, do you think this trend is going to continue? But most importantly, what's the biggest factor that separates the people who do become successful? And I'm not just talking about making money, from those who give up or never become successful. So it's 2 questions in one.
Yeah, I love it. Both great questions. Yes, this trend will continue. Let me explain why it will continue. It's because podcasting is killing radio. People said that in 2007 and 8, but it wasn't true, right? Now it's true. Why is it true? Because all of our cars are being pre-built with podcast listening capabilities.
Right.
And so that's historically where everyone listened to the radio, and now they're using that time to listen to podcasts. There are 2, so if you go to our website, streamlinedpodcast.com, click on the blog and click on the market insights, there's a chart there that will show radio literally going down and podcasting going up at a very exponential rate in the same time frames. And I very much believe that that's going to continue. As far as who's successful, who isn't, it's all about consistency. Consistency is the number one name to this game. So for example, Joe Rogan, love him or hate him, he has garnered the largest audience in the world, literally more than Fox, CNN, all of those major legacy media companies, all of them combined. Joe Rogan gets more downloads on each of his episodes. And why? Sure, he's famous and he's a really good speaker and etc., but he's been doing this for a long time. And it took him, I think, almost 6 or 7 years before he really started seeing traction and getting some of these big numbers. So it takes time. You got to build that audience, and you got to be consistent, because the moment you decide I'm not going to release an episode this week, they're going to go find someone else to get that episode from. And then it's likely they forget about you.
Right.
Very good. I've taken more than my share of time. Kathleen, back to you.
So Kevin, how do we contact you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to just go to our website, streamlinedpodcast.com, either hit contact us, book a call, any of those methods. If you want to reach out directly to me, it's kevin@streamlinedpodcast.com. I really don't spend that much time on social media, to be honest, at this point. So email is probably the best way to get in touch with me.
Someone like me. I'm the same. And I've just got to throw in there, I've spent quite a lot of time on Kevin's website before we asked him to be a guest, because we like to check our guests out. It's easy to navigate, and B, it's really good. And the blog is good. Some very good information on the blog, very good descriptions of his services. So go and have a look at it. Thanks, Kevin.
Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you so much for being our guest today, Kevin. We really appreciate it. And we really appreciate all of you for tuning in. And once again, we love reading your comments. So do please keep those coming. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye.